Hi everyone, Nemo here. Welcome to the Nemo & Co conference halftime show, where we're going to give you the recap of General Conference so that you don't have to watch it. I'm joined today by Laura and Julian Heath, so let's bring them in. Hey,
Hello.
Laura. Hi, Julian.
Oh yeah.
Firstly, tell me about what's going on behind you on the wall. What is going on?
We're broadcasting today from a secret location.
Okay.
Yeah, this is our this is the HQ for the Mormon Resistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got some connections going on behind you by the looks of it?
Yeah, these are just some things that we are in the process of investigating. I can't say a huge amount about it, but you can probably see some familiar faces there.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got. I can divulge a little bit to you. Okay. So here we've got a picture of
might know this man.
Yeah. There's Russell Nelson there.
He's kind of glowing. It's not glowing. Yeah, it's like countenance.
It's spooky.
Yeah.
And then we've got Wendy Nelson. Mm-hmm. This is Sherry Jew.
Yes.
And we've discovered a connection between them. We think that it might be some kind of underground crocheting ring that they're involved in.
Okay.
Something like that. There's definitely some kind of connection. Lots of discussion about that. What else have we got here? Yes, Alder Bednar got here. He made a statement a while back. I'm sure you'll be aware of this, that there are no homosexuals in the church. Mm-hmm. We've discovered he's actually wrong.
He's wrong.
We think we might be able to find some homosexuals in the church.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're working on that. What else have we got here? Alder Holland has been coming up a lot in our intelligence. We've been doing a bit of research.
Do I dare move this and see if you can see it?
Oh no, don't move that. So Jeffrey Holland, there are two Jeffrey Hollands coming up.
We put him in Google.
I like that picture there. I don't know if that's his alter ego or what. There's something going on with these two.
We put some question marks and exclamation marks just in case. Oh, there we go. So we're really sorry if that's not you.
Right.
You've made it to the board anyway.
In the UK, I don't know whether this kind of crosses the borders, but in the UK, there's lots of talk about lots of links with Jeffrey Holland and horses and guns. I think he likes to shoot horses.
I think he went on a spree somewhere.
If you're from anyone from the Bristol mission will probably know about this. About
anyone served in Bristol.
Jeffrey Holland's
something about horse
shooting horses or something like that. So we're investigating that from purely from an animal cruelty angle. And then we've got President Oakes here and the unicorn. We're not really allowed to say much about the unicorn.
Okay.
Let's just hope that Jeffrey doesn't shoot it.
Okay, well, on that note...
That's as much as we can say about that, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing what you can. Let's play a quick game, and this is a brand new game that we're going to play at every halftime show called Jesus, Joe, or Russell.
I like the jingle.
So the scores on the doors at the moment are that Russell M. Nelson was quoted 5 times so far in this conference. Jesus was quoted 11 times, so he's up on him by about double. Our beloved prophet was said twice. We got 2 mentions of the covenant path. We got 2 let God prevails. And most importantly, there was 32 viewers of the Romanian translation of the live session of conference. So, there's that. And I intend to bring you a niche little statistic like that every single session. So that score will get updated as we go, and by the end of the conference, we will see who reigns victorious, Jesus, Joe, or Russell.
Are you going to do
that, man? Go on.
Are you going to do like a score for each session and then an overall?
Yeah. So I'll let you know what happened that session, but that little jingle thing will continue to build and grow over the sessions. So I'm very excited for that. And sessions it is, because I am watching all 5, for those of you who haven't caught that idea yet. I'm going to be staying up till 4 a.m. tonight to react live to the women's session of General Conference. So I do.
That is a big. That's a big. I know that your mum doesn't normally let you stay up past midnight, so
It's very true.
4 in the morning. This is a big night for you. Big night for you, Doug.
Absolutely. Should we start by talking about Russell M. Nelson then and the Saturday morning session? Dan H. Oakes was conducting. We got an opening prayer from someone whose name I actually didn't catch. And Russell M. Nelson started off the conference with his remarks. He started by mentioning a conflict in the world. Didn't mention that it was in Ukraine. Didn't mention that Russia was one of the other significant parties involved. Basically did as much as he could to not talk about it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was inevitable. For everything else that we've heard from the church about the conflict over in Ukraine, I think it was inevitable. I kind of understand it because it's really difficult, because I would love there to be much... I'd love to hear some condemnation, really. You know, I kind of feel like Jesus would be a little bit more condemning of what's going on, and it was more kind of, you know, we pray for them and we want peace and you know, and all of that stuff. I get that they can't say too much because there are church members in Russia, and obviously they've got a duty of care for them as well. So it is a complex one.
We did have that talk later on. Oh, go on.
So I like the fact that they urged the members to do all that they could, and they weren't specific. They didn't say anything about humanitarian aid or kind of like funnel them into a specific way of doing it. They did leave it broad and say do all that you can, which leaves individuals up to following their own conscience, which was good. But it did feel a little bit like there was 5 minutes at the start that was left as a gap so that they could insert what they needed to, because we didn't hear anything about it anywhere else.
Well, so we heard talks about peacemakers later on, which is what is quite interesting. Let's see who spoke about that.
Anderson.
It was Anderson spoke about peacemakers. And he said specifically peacemakers are not passive, which is interesting because the church leaders are nothing but passive in many ways. But we'll get on to that later. Russell Nelson then went on to talk about missionary work, didn't he?
Can I butt in before we get onto the missionary work? Because he used that he used the Ukraine conflict to then kind of go along the whole rhetoric of, you know, wars and rumors of wars. These are the last days, and he said something along the lines of the gospel has never. The gospel has never been needed more than it is today, and this is something we see a lot of, this kind of catastrophizing of the current situation, and I just think, maybe I'm being picky and pedantic here, but I just kind of thought, well, really, never. You've just talked about the conflict in Ukraine, and you've used that to say, well, the gospel has never been needed more than it is now. Second World War, First World War. You know, I would argue that was, in times of warfare, that was worse than it is now. In times of economic crises, it was worse than it is now. Food shortages, disease. You know, you think about the Spanish flu epidemic just after the First World War, and the millions that were killed by that.
But you see, the foundation is laid, because what they actually then go on to talk about in terms of wickedness, I think that's where he's leading. He's kind of laying that foundation for much more important than famine and
but still, I still don't like that, because I think, well, actually, the world is in a there are problems, of course, but I think when we focus on we have this rhetoric, and then we focus on all these negative things, you know, and I do think that 24-hour media, social media, you know, really kind of ups this kind of this confirmation bias that we have of everything being really bad, and that's just not the case.
Doom scrolling is a thing, you know. I found myself initially when war broke out with Ukraine just on Reddit constantly doom scrolling and looking at what was going on, and I don't think a war has ever been quite so in our pockets in terms of we can see what's going on in the front line in Ukraine. Soldiers have got GoPros and iPhones and whatever, taking images, uploading it to the internet. You can see exactly what's going on in a lot of ways. So yeah, I totally get that. And he called on all of us to pray as well, which is interesting. And then, yeah, he kind of took a bit of a switch to missionary work and, let's get on and go on missions. And we have a missionary responsibility. Now, my questions then would be, why on earth the First Presidency serve missions? They're harping on about missions, they're banging on about missions, but I don't believe any of the 3 members of the First Presidency served missions.
Is that correct?
I think so.
I didn't know that.
Let me fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that is correct.
Do you want me to fact check that?
Please.
You're not very.
Clearly, we know what we're talking about.
It's not really your forte, is it?
No, that's true. Please, you do tell. And if anyone knows that to be...
with a unicorn.
I'll get back to you. Yeah.
All right. If anyone in the chat knows that... It
depends on your definition of mission, doesn't it?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So,
because he did talk about proselytizing all service missions.
Yeah.
So, with that...
From what I understand, Donny Osmond was excused from going on a mission because of his mission was to bring fabulous music
that's what you wanted to do,
flares to the world. Yeah, that was my hope as well. Instead, I ended up in London South Mission. But yeah, so maybe that was it. Their missions were exempt because of all the other things that they did.
So on that proselytizing service, I didn't catch it, but were they saying that you can choose?
Yeah, so he was saying whether you either go on a proselytizing or a service mission. Now, I don't know whether he was...
senior missionaries only, they get to choose, or you're talking about for...
That caveat. He was just talking about anyone.
Yeah, I don't think it means that you can choose.
You just may go on either.
It doesn't matter which one, they're both equally important.
Yeah, I think, which is good, because service missions do fill a sort of vital gap for those that can't leave their family for 2 years for whatever reason. I never say that I don't give credit where credit's due. I think it's good that he mentioned both those types of missions are options for people, because it is good. It is good for that. But yeah, he pushed young men particularly to serve missions, and he stressed sister missionaries are, like, missions for sisters are optional.
Yeah, which was interesting. I mean, recently, didn't John Julian in Mormon Stories talk about how sort of 2/3 of the missionaries that were going out were actually sisters? So and we get that in another talk, the idea of this is optional for sisters. That's very much the case, whereas it's seen as, they push the duty for young men.
Jacob Williams,
as you can see, one of my agents, Jacob Williams, has just done the research.
You're taking credit for Jacob, are you?
Yeah, Jacob Williams is a pseudonym, of course.
Oh, that's interesting. No missions to the First Presidency.
I'm not saying, isn't that hypocritical? They didn't serve missions, yet they're pushing them and serve. But is it that important if you can end up in the top 3 most holy and anointed positions of the Lord? You can get your second anointing clearly without going on a mission. That's for certain.
What might be nice is for them to say, we didn't serve, and that's something that we feel that we might have missed out on. You for sure really enjoyed your mission, didn't you?
Yeah,
lots of things that you gained from it, and so it would actually be, I think, really helpful for them to say, we didn't actually serve missions. It's something that at times we wish we had. I know several men that haven't served missions, and it's a little bit of and we don't get it as much in the UK in terms of social currency. It's certainly something that's a bigger problem in the US. If you haven't served a mission, there is a bit of a cloud over you. We don't get that as much over here, but certainly the men that I know that have either come back from their missions early or have not served, they feel that that's slightly painful for them. That would be helpful, I think, as the First Presidency, for them to say, look, we acknowledge, we don't want you to feel this. Maybe it's a different angle that would be helpful for them.
That's a good point. But someone who definitely did go on a mission is M. Russell Ballard, and he was our next speaker, and he was the first kind of proper speaker because Russell Nelson does this little welcome to conference bit and kind of sets a theme. And M. Russell Ballard, boy, did he really kind of push home on that whole mission point. He started off by talking about macular degeneration in his left eye, which made him grateful for other types of vision. I thought he was going to go on the myopic route, but no, he used it to talk about other types of vision. Did a bit of reminiscing about his British visit, and he's generally, he was talking about mission focus. He said something really weird, and I want to get your thoughts on this. He said the lowering of the mission age was to give the youth the opportunity to serve. That's a bit of a non-sentence, because it was already 19-year-olds in terms of the men that were going. The sisters, maybe younger sisters, he was giving them an opportunity to serve, but he's not talking about like 12, 13-year-olds who we typically consider the youth of the church. It's a bit of a weird phrase. What did you guys think?
Yeah, they didn't land with me so much. Yeah, do we remember what did President Monson say when he? I don't remember him saying that when he changed it. I don't remember him using that as a reasoning at all.
I always find it interesting whenever a senior church leader says this is the reason we do something. I always want to really keep an eye on that, because someone else might contradict them.
Yeah, and I mean, all the way through these two talks with missionary work as the theme, I was kind of thinking about, well, why? What's all this about? And I'm completely open to be corrected on this, but it struck me that it wasn't. There was talk of gathering of Israel, so I'll accept that. But it seemed like a lot of the talk was about, look at all the things that you will gain from going on a mission. Not look, there are people out there that really need the gospel, and there are people out there that really need our service, and we need, it's the Christian thing to do, to get out there and to spread that important message. I think there is a lot of certainly he talked about kind of how it would help you in your career, things like that, or certainly how it had helped him in his career.
Which is not wrong.
No, it's not wrong. It's not wrong at all. And I think
probably in Utah as well, where you served, who you served with, could actually help you.
Yeah, I think they're being very honest there. I remember when on my mission president saying to me very early on, he said, I think it was in the first, when he because he was my second mission president, when he came up and joined the mission, in his first conference, he said, look, when I was set apart, I was told that my first responsibility was not baptisms. Now, I'm not here for baptisms. My first responsibility was to teach you missionaries the gospel. And so I think, this whole message really is about, or certainly this is how I heard it. We know that we're losing a lot of youth, and this is a great way of retaining them. This is a great way of keeping them, especially when you think about all the preparation that Ballard was talking about as well, and how you need to be worthy. So he's saying you've got to do all of these things so you can go on a mission, and the mission will kind of galvanise your testimony. It's a great way of keeping people in. Also, when you sacrifice 2 years, the more you sacrifice to something, the harder it is to kind of scrutinise it and say, oh, actually, that was a bit of a waste. So when you've made that kind of investment, then you're less likely to kind of question whether that was the right thing to do. So yeah, I think that's the real purpose of all this, is right. Let's get them going on missions again, because it's really good for keeping them in the church.
I do think as well, it was interesting how it was very much towards the youth. You had the original example of him saying that his family were essentially less active for a while, and while they were away, he's now got somebody in his ear saying, this is how you fill out the missionary papers. And he said that they were supportive when they came back, but man, that's a breach of boundaries there, and we're so good at that as Mormons, at breaching boundaries and all of that. And he talks to the youth about their responsibility, then he talks to the parents about urging their children, and then he goes around to the bishops and says, call your young men in, start prepping them for this now. So these when it comes to agency, you're pretty much cornered as a young man. Someone's going to get you at some point and corner you about what your thoughts are. So I think it was definitely, there was a mention, certainly with President Nelson, about senior missionary couples, but it was fleeting. It really was. At the end of the day, they are the stalwarts. They're the ones that are in the church at the moment, diehards. They're not going anywhere because they're so invested, and they're not really affected by a lot of the social media stuff. And so there was a token sort of comment for them and their missions, but it really is focused on the youngsters.
I think the
Do you know
only
what would
thing
be great?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, you go.
So say the only other thing I'd like to say about Ballard really is, if you notice, he called on them as an apostle to go on a mission, right? He did. As an apostle, I call you to go on a mission, right? And what's interesting is he asked them to get their friends to go, and he then used the commitment and invitation narrative and paradigm that is in Preach My Gospel. He asked them to commit to go, or commit to God that you'll go on a mission, and to invite. He invited them to gain a testimony. So he was using a lot of commit and invite language, which is all throughout Preach My Gospel.
Could I just say around, because I was thinking, if I'd been a missionary during the pandemic and I'd got back, what would I want them to say to me? I want them to say that it wasn't for nothing, because I just sat in my flat with my companion for two years, and I nearly went out of my mind, and it took every inch of my, of me to stay on my mission, because it was for something.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said, he acknowledged them and said it was different to other missions and it was hard, but he said you got to use technology. And I felt for them, because I thought, I want you to tell me that angels are going to be on their way to people because of something that I did, because these missionaries have had to use all sorts of ingenious ways to infiltrate gardening groups and crochet groups and all sorts of other groups, pretending to be something else as an in, because they're trying to be innovative, and to try, we've seen it in some of the groups where we've been in local groups where missionaries have kind of infiltrated under the guise of something else, and then kind of we're happy gardeners, but we can't actually come around and garden because we can't come around. But here, here's a badge here, and it was, they've had to really kind of move around in order to try and make it work. And I just felt that wasn't quite enough for them. I think I'd feel a little bit miffed if I got back and there wasn't going to be someone wasn't going to have a heavenly vision because I used technology well. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like they were got the consolation prize, didn't they? It's like, and we've got to mention those COVID missionaries. You did your best.
Well done, COVID missionaries. I applaud you for sticking at it. And I applaud those that went home because your mental health needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder whether they're worried about as well the amount of people that leave kind of after they come home from a mission. I think that's going to be weighing on their minds. We know the statistics in general about the amount of people that leave the church before they're 30. So they really want this to be, they want this to be a really sort of, they want the missionary experience to galvanize people and to, like you said, to keep them in, as it were. And is one of the reasons why, if you're looking at the church from like almost a cult perspective, that the more cult-like behaviors are generally what happens on a mission. That's the time when the church said it's cultiest almost, is when members are serving missions, and they want that experience to really keep people in.
He mentions the phrase life of service twice, actually.
Sister Abuerto was pretty Christ-centered. She started to bring Christ into this, and in fairness, it was a fairly Christ-centered conference session overall, actually, as we saw from the statistics in terms of who was quoted. So she said she came in contact with the church at 26, and she was saying like, I was 26, I had a child, and it was a refuge from the storm. Now, we know this about missionaries, and we know this about when a lot of people come into contact with the church. If you actually look at when she came into contact with the church, she was 26, she had a 3-year-old child. It was a vulnerable time in her life because she'd just gone through a divorce. And she said it herself, it was a refuge from the storm. You know that what happened was she came into this building, she met with these members, they all embraced her, someone looked after a kid when she was trying to pay attention, all this sort of stuff, right? They gave her that community that she was after. And we know that a lot of people joined the church at vulnerable times in their lives because of this. What are your thoughts on her talk?
I just want to kind of point out the flow there. It really felt, up to that point, it definitely felt that there was a plan, so you've got Nelson coming in with that, very short, snappy talk about we're calling everybody to be missionaries and you've got a responsibility and all of that stuff, to then Ballard kind of reminiscing a little bit about his mission. And now you've got Sister Roberto, basically saying, look, I am one of the beneficiaries of that. You know, look at what's happened to me because of this. You know, which is great, but it's also quite emotive, isn't it? You know, for those people thinking that are sitting in the do they still sit in congregations over here and watch it? I don't really know. Do we still broadcast over COVID? I'm not sure. We might be broadcasting them to congregate. Anyway, people sitting at home listening to it, that are thinking, oh well, that's me. Maybe I should be going now. Are then going to hear that and think, yes, because that's what it's all about. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Sorry,
it was a get back to the building talk.
Yeah, and they'd set it up really nicely.
What I will say is so there is a member of the ward that we belonged to that is from Portugal. And when I talked to her about her experiences, her sister and her were real beneficiaries of church welfare, which is, she talks in there about fast offerings from members. And I like the fact that she said the church is the members. The generosity is from the members. The members have got good hearts. And she was a beneficiary of that. And I don't think we always see that in the UK, because we have these, I think we have a system of welfare where we can look after each other and our NHS is in place. We don't see that as much. So it's easy for us to be quite skeptical when we don't see that all the time. But I was surprised when our friend had said, you know, I can't fault them. They paid for us to have an education. So again, credit where credit's due. That might have been her experience and some others, and we don't necessarily see that here in the UK.
And she said the church is the members. It's more than the buildings and the ecclesiastical structures, but it's headed up by Jesus and the prophet who's his mouthpiece. So it's like she got so close to saying, guys, it's just everyone getting together. But don't forget, we got Jesus, and then we got the man who claims to speak for Jesus. So we can't quite forget all about it.
That's the formula that comes every single time.
Did you notice as well, Nemo, that she made the statement about the church being the scaffolding? She made that statement, which I really like, because it reminds me of the talk. Can't remember who it was. The talk that got scrapped, basically.
Done.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a done talk. It was a really great talk about how, essentially,
you don't need the church.
We don't need the church. The church is just the scaffolding to get us to be these Christ-like people. And the talk was then kind of re-recorded. So this was a quite famous talk. I'm sure I'll get one of my agents to do the research on this again.
Someone listener's going to know that.
Yeah,
we talk about it a lot. I can't remember.
Yeah, so he gives this talk about.
Is it L. Tom Perry?
No, it's not. It's not an apostle. He gives this talk, and they then re-record it
with coughs.
Yeah, after the conference, they re-record him doing it. They take all that stuff out and they re-record it and make it sound like that was the original talk.
Okay, it wasn't Maxwell, was it?
No, it wasn't. Right. It definitely wasn't an apostle. So I'll get someone on it. We'll find out. Sorry,
Pullman.
Pullman.
I think it was Pullman. I think it was.
But yeah, anyway, it just reminded me of that, which is a fantastic idea. But it doesn't work because of what we just talked. Yeah.
The church has to stop short of making itself redundant, and this is something that's really interesting when you kind of get into conversations with apologists about, you know, the fallibility of prophets and this sort of thing. And when you really start to boil down to the stuff you actually need the church for, you're like, well, actually, I can get that elsewhere. So the church has to be very careful to try and keep itself necessary.
Yeah,
especially
after COVID. Yeah, especially since and the whole COVID thing was brilliant, wasn't it? Because they really went for this. How inspired the kind of home study program was, and that was all there to set up because of COVID, so that we don't really need the physical church. And obviously now we want to be telling the members, no, you do, you've got to come back.
You need it.
And we all know that there are a lot of people that haven't come back. A lot of people that said, actually, I really like church at home. It's great.
And we've got a priesthood at home. We can do the sacrament. We're happy. We're doing it. We're doing our thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Go on.
I did think that she hit. It was almost like I think she hit a few good spots. Like she'd been reading the answers to the surveys that have been coming around, and hit quite a few good Jesus. And do you know what stood out a little bit? And it shouldn't stand out, but she said sisters and brothers.
Yeah,
she said sisters and brothers because we're so used to hearing brothers and sisters. It stood out. It was just a nice little touch.
That's become a bit of a thing now. That's become a bit of a thing. They're starting to say it more. Like I think the area presidency, when they sent out that notice about Ukraine, they said sisters and brothers. It's this little thing that for some reason the church thinks that makes them woke. But like, well, if we say that,
it's
then
pretty pointless. But it's interesting that it stands out to us because we're so used to hearing it the other way.
Aren't we so woke? Can we talk about Bednar? Let's talk about Bednar because that was quite a talk. He's told us he couldn't sing very well, but that he likes singing hymns anyway. I know quite a few members like that. And he started then going on about let us all press on, talking about Lehi's vision. I thought it was great that he talks about a great and spacious building while speaking to a 20,000 seat conference centre. Talks about they're in the attitude of mocking and pointing fingers, and he was pointing a lot of fingers at apostates and people that leave the church and influences he doesn't want people listening to. So pot kettle black in that situation. What do you guys think?
I felt very much the same. Yeah, both barrels out for that. I think he started with the idea of songs, which I thought lots of people find feel the spirit through music and songs. I don't know how depending on which song you listen to, they're not written by prophets, so you can then discard what's said within them because they're not written by prophets. So in a time where we're questioning whether something is said by a prophet or not said by a prophet, telling people to follow the words of hymns probably not a good idea. But I understand the sentiment. But then the idea of then using press on, we will heed not what the wicked will say. Who are the wicked? Who are the wicked? And it felt very much like it was landing on the shoulders of so-called apostates.
Yeah. He talked about discerning the emptiness of the things that come from the great and spacious building.
Yeah, I think it was very clear, wasn't it, right from the start, that was going to be his big thing of just saying, don't listen to anybody but us.
And he did say about jeers and insults, and I thought that was rich coming off the back of Brad Wilcox's talk when he talks about other churches playing at church, or other religions. And I thought, there was one quote. He said, "If we do what's right, we have no need to fear, for the Lord our helper will ever be near." Now, whether it's the Lord that will lead people that have moved away from the LDS Church, whether it's the Lord that's leading them or not, they all feel that way. If we do what's right, we have no need to fear. This is the motivation of people that are speaking truth. They feel exactly the same way. They're speaking truth. They've got no need to fear. So it is ironic that a lot of the quotes that he was using represent good people that have followed their conscience, and that has moved them away from the LDS Church. The LDS Church and the gospel of Jesus Christ, they are not the same thing. And I think there's a continuous melding of that.
And you could argue that what he's doing is fear mongering. He's saying, to label people as being wicked, it's so reductive, isn't it? And just shows how little they really understand of what it is to go through a faith crisis, and to understand what if we're going to call it the great and spacious building, what's really going on in that great and spacious building. They just don't understand at all.
No,
or maybe they do, but they're using it because fear is a really powerful tool, isn't it? Don't listen to anything that they've said. If you've really got nothing to fear, then listen to it.
Yeah. If you have no need to fear, then just hear it. I want to make a point that I was correct in my predictions from last night's predictions show that is over on the Priesthood Dispatches channel. I said that we would get some stand-in holy places, and we did. We got some stand-in holy places in this talk. We also got a mention of the covenant path here. And he told us what a compass is. Now, I know we've spoken about this before. They say a compass is this, and they will tell us what something is, as though we don't understand.
He did exactly the same thing.
He did it in the European devotional. So the European
he's recently, he's recently found out what a compass is, and he just wants to tell everyone.
It's like an excited 5-year-old. He's like, I know what a compass is.
These are amazing. They point
It's
to
awesome.
north. Doesn't matter where you go, they always point to north.
Yeah, but he ripped off his own European devotional talk for this talk. He used almost verbatim some of the phraseology and words from that. And something I really want to talk about with you guys is he talked about personal connection with deity is strengthened by fidelity to covenants, and fidelity to covenants enables us to press on. So he's like, our personal relationship with deity is gate kept by us lot. You can have a personal relationship all you want with Jesus, as long as you do it through us. Which then, is it really a personal relationship?
Absolutely agree. I mean, that formula that you mentioned, this kept being a reoccurring theme. This idea of giving you this invitation to have a personal relationship with Jesus, and then bolting it onto all of your to-do list. Elder Bednar is just a lot less discreet about it, and he will go straight in with it. So he talked an awful lot about personal relationship with Jesus, which is great if that's what you want. And then made it synonymous with all of these covenants that you need to follow. So he said in there, what helps you to have that personal relationship is scriptures, prayer, taking the sacrament, discerning what is wickedness. Now, you can get into the whole realms of cognitive dissonance and discernment. So it really was a very unabashed way of saying, if you want a relationship with Jesus, you have to come through us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it struck me again. This is a theme that goes all the way through. There's lots and lots of mention of covenants, and this. If Peter were here, he would say that this is just typical Pharisaical church, and I just would love to. It's almost like that was all it is. All Christianity is about is keeping your covenants. And I know. I guess. I'm trying to listen to my kind of inner TBM. They would be saying, well, yes, because the covenants incorporate everything, because you can say we're covenanting to do all of the things that Jesus taught. Yep, okay, fair enough. But it would just be nice to hear. So it almost felt like the overarching message of the whole conference, or certainly this is what I got from it, was this is how to stay in the church, right? These are all our aim now is just to keep everybody in the boat. No real idea of what we should be doing to live a good Christian life. This isn't like, hey, yeah, the world is full of wickedness, and so this is how we can make it better. This is how we can reach out. And again, I get it. Some people say, well, that's what missionary work is about. But I'd just love to hear some more kind of specific Christian teachings rather than just few commandments, stay in the boat.
But if you look at their mission, if they talked so much about Jesus and they've kind of spoke less about Joseph, which is what everybody wanted, but then there's a lot of Christian religions out there that will do that better. So the only thing that sets them apart is the covenants, is the authority. So that has to be.
It's like if you want Jesus, you can get it better elsewhere.
You can.
Yeah.
I was going to just say there was one thing. Bednar cried. That's not usual, is it?
Crocodile tears.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe he had to make it for Eyring, because Eyring didn't really.
Oh, he did a bit.
He choked up a bit.
Yeah, maybe.
They're only allowed one crier per session.
You're allowed 7 tears between them.
Yeah, and
they draw lots.
Like they had made a little arrangement beforehand.
But one thing I didn't like, Elder Bednar, don't say this. I don't like this at all. He said he was telling people to hold fast rather than clinging on. My nuanced friends, this is all they have left. They are clinging on in hopes that you are going to say something that is going to be restorative to their testimony, but also restorative or repentant for the hurt. And for you to say that their clinging on isn't valid, don't like that. I didn't think that was very kind.
Absolutely. It's this idea that like, oh, we want you all in or not at all. It's like, well, hang on. The church, with the way it's shrinking, can't really afford to be in a position to say, well, you lot that aren't fully committed, you can jog on. We can't be doing that.
There is actually. I hadn't thought about that. There was a talk recently about being all in, wasn't there? Where was that?
Oh, all the time. I couldn't tell you who exactly it was, but yeah,
The one recently called All
one.
In. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me know in the chat. Should we move on to Anderson? Because I feel like Anderson called all of us out quite a lot. He talked about, isn't the internet amazing? Unfortunately, with every good invention comes good and bad. We can talk all about Jesus on the internet, but blokes like Nemo the Mormon are out there chatting nonsense on their channel. So don't listen to them. He talked about polarization. And then he went on to use loads of binaries talking about people being either good or bad. Faithful. It's talking about being polarizing.
It's so interesting because he did acknowledge it. At least he said nothing is exempt from polarization, even the church. But there's this contradictory message that we're getting, isn't there? And we had this with our good mate that came over and talked, the church history guy, Keith
Erickson.
Yeah, and he's saying, look, let's not have this polarized view of everything. But we're getting it from them. The people at the top are creating this polarized view by saying things like, these people are wicked, all the if you're not constantly, just praising the church and saying great things about it, then you're wicked. You're one of those wicked people in the great spacious building, and again, this is exactly what Anderson does.
And remember, everyone is God's offspring, but we are God's children. He made that very important distinction.
Yeah, it's just
he made a real big us versus them.
A lot of othering, isn't there? Yeah.
What I will say for him is he started off with saying how happy they were, how happy the LDS Church were to be in collaboration with LGBT people.
Yeah. I thought that was quite interesting.
It was a very interesting start, and I wondered how comfortable Elder Oaks was sitting there, because he said actually in business and in community.
Talked about that bipartisan bill that basically LDS members had pushed for, which would help gay members. So he's like, oh, look at us. Aren't we good to the gay community? Even though, they've banned people from lighting up the Y and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, it was almost like somebody's got to say this bit of paper here. I've got this bit of paper. Who's going to say it? Oaks is like, no, I'm not doing it. So it got given to, and he just put it in the front at the start of his talk. Yeah. And I was thinking that's in direct contrast to Elder Oaks, who encouraged employers to not employ gay people way back in 2008, 2009.
One bill saying, oh, that helps gay people doesn't make up for the thousands they spent on Prop 8 denying gay people the right to marry.
Didn't he at one point say words along the lines of, you can have gay friends, but don't bring them home.
Yeah, don't expect them to stay over. So if this is a movement that they are making, we welcome it. But we would also like you to be able to say, sorry for being homophobic beforehand. We're sorry about that. We're going to do better. And we want to work in collaboration. So we don't want to keep bashing about it. But please acknowledge that you haven't always been kind.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I was going to mention that because, again, he quote somebody as saying, having boundaries doesn't mean boundaries don't need to be battle lines.
That was a Nelson quote. You quoted President Nelson.
Yeah, boundaries don't need to be battle lines. And then you've got, so we're not firing our muskets anymore. Yeah, we're just making these boundaries. We're not. It's not about musket fire.
It's a lot of doublespeak.
It's mental. And I really don't like it. I'm going to look into, I didn't get a chance, but I'm going to look into that. Arizona Reporter was the newspaper that reported that article. So I'm going to have a look into that article and see what it says fully. But he also spoke about an opinion piece, which was responded to by Amos Brown. He said that the church leaders are an embodiment of the best leadership we have in this country. And he went, Elder Brown, he's a peacemaker. We like him. Because, he said nice things about church leadership.
Nice things about us. Yeah. And so he talks about fiery darts, doesn't he? Fiery darts is just code for criticism of the church. So anything that is critical. And again, it just... I just think about all of my friends and some of my, friends that are still in, and family members who, some of whom are very offended by the fact that we are, that we talk the way that we do, even though they won't listen to anything that we've done. It's like, I'm really offended by the things that I haven't listened to because I'm being told not to by my church leaders. And so there's this idea of don't listen to anything that anyone says negative. And I just think it's so bad, because anywhere else in our lives, we would never apply this kind of logic. If you're buying a vacuum cleaner, you would apply more critical thinking than you are to where you place your eternal salvation. You're not. No one goes on Amazon or any other internet retailer. No one goes on Amazon and only looks at the good reviews. No one would do that. No one would book a holiday and only look at the good reviews. And yet the message that we're getting is just listen to the good thing. You can trust us. Just listen. We're not going to lie. We would never lie to you. And for anybody else, in anything else, and even for these people that I'm talking about, if they were looking at a different religion, that would massively ring alarm bells for them. And they would say, hang on a sec, there's something going on here. But for some reason, we just eat it up. Yeah, fiery darts.
There's two more points on this I'd like to make. He talked about times when being a peacemaker means staying silent, which I think gives them absolute carte blanche to just ignore issues they don't want to deal with, which I think is wrong. I think if they are God's representatives on the earth, they should take a moral stance on any and all issues that affect the members of the church.
What happens to the standing for truth?
Exactly.
All of that was given with Elder Gordon Hinckley.
Mm-hmm. And he said we should withdraw from the circle of anger and contention, which basically means move away from apostates, steer clear of them, even if they're members of your own family, seemingly, which is just going to cause more divisiveness. But can we, more than all that, can we please talk about this story he told about Democratic Republic of Congo, where, and I quote, our leaders with nominal humanitarian funds found a way to help.
It's not a wealthy church,
no.
is it?
We're investigating it, though, so don't worry.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's on our radar.
It's on your radar. Smashing. I'm going to have a look into that, and yeah.
Yeah, do you not link to that, though, as well? He talked about people questioning their kind of worldly motives. And he made this idea that, we're not in the position that we're in because we're successful or anything like that. And you think, it's just a coincidence then, isn't it? Where are the apostles that aren't, hugely successful in some kind of in some field? And I know you could come up with some kind of circular argument about how, they're perpetuating some kind of prosperity gospel, which I hate. I think that's just absolutely awful. But yeah, just a coincidence. Just a coincidence that they're all really, really successful.
Yeah, if only the church had some money, eh? Can we go on to Elder Gaverett?
No, sorry.
No,
okay. One other thing.
Did you think this
isn't your show?
Oh, all right. Sorry. Yeah,
I've got something that I want to talk about. He also said about, I can't remember his exact words, but he said that there would be few. He's talking about church membership. He said there'll be few in the latter days. I thought that's really, really interesting. This kind of shift in the narrative from, we're always being told how the church is growing, aren't we?
He said few will make Christ central, didn't he? Few will make Christ central in their lives in the latter days. Yeah.
Don't worry, everyone. No, I know that you can see in your congregation that it's shrinking and there are lots of people leaving, but don't worry, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Men's hearts will fail them, wheat and chaff.
Yeah.
Stone cut out of a mountain without hands no longer applies. We're like Brigham and blood atonement, like Brigham and Adam God doctrine. We're throwing that one away, and we're going with the narrative of, "Ooh, aren't we going to be oppressed?" Yeah,
we're going to break
so.
Right.
Now may I move?
Don't talk about.
We don't talk about Brigham.
We don't talk about Brigham. That's a good point. Let's talk about Gaverett instead. Who, all I have to say about this, not really a lot to say other than let the poor boy play football. Just let him play.
Yeah.
That's all he wants to do is go play football.
I appreciate again voices from that are not just American men. So it was good to hear another member's perspective. But again, boundaries, people. So you've got a child that has gone to football, but has also had the foresight to recognise that his dad isn't a member, and he wants to actually. He realises my dad's not a member. He's at home by himself. Well done, tick. Okay, then he doesn't hang out with his dad. He goes to play football. But then instead of having a conversation with him, that the mum's gone to church, had a conversation with Bishop. They've kind of said, like, we're going to tag team the boy, and then we're going to passive aggressively give him a lesson to be taught. And you just think it's just the backdoor way of doing stuff. And I just think it's, again, a breach of boundaries. Just have some conversations that are meaningful conversations where people actually feel like they have choice. So many examples. I'm sure there's so many people that have examples of this. I certainly did. I grew up doing judo and I loved judo. I did it a lot. And then I had this whole guilt thing where, we competed a lot on a Sunday, and that was knocking it on the head, and having that conversation with my judo instructor where I'm saying, I'm not coming anymore because of that. It was just like a bit heartbreaking for me. But so many people have their clubs on a weekend and they're having to deal with this. But again, just let the boy play football.
Yeah, but I think because the idea of, they've got things that they would rather do on Sunday, I don't think that's going to stand up very well. Is it? Because, there's lots of times when what we might want to do might contradict what we're supposed to do as members of the church.
It feels very heavy.
Yeah, I don't like the guilt thing. I don't like the kind of that, like you say, that kind of passive aggressive thing. But I think it's a really good point, this idea of putting him at odds with his dad, who's not a member. There's no respect for that. And I thought it's interesting because didn't God reveal a policy change that was all about putting people at odds with their parents? Which I know that a few years later he changed his mind on that. But I don't want to make light of that because that's much, much more serious and something that I've personally found very upsetting. But it is an interesting idea, isn't it? If we're going to say, well, we don't want to put people at odds with their parents that might not share our values, but that doesn't count if they really like football.
No, not if they really like football. So there's nothing else really there, to be honest. Other than he gave us a little bit of a make sure you go to the temple, get back in the temples, go to the temple.
I like the idea of him implied that the talk was you can't nothing more to give you. I like the idea of because if you say that it implies something that's from the heart, something that's about intent. That shouldn't translate to obedience. I think that's a and again, this is a theme where things of the heart translate to this is a list of requirements. Once you do this, your heart's change as a result. And I
get it. Yeah, it's not like I don't like this checklist culture, this idea that just tick the boxes, get that inactive member a job and an assignment, and all of a sudden, boom, that's it, you got them. And they'll go up the ladder, which is what Elder Catcher talked about. He was trying to clearly compete with this idea of a covenant path, which I believe Christopherson kicked off, and then Nelson has clung onto like a limpet. But Elder Catcher came up with his own catchphrase, the ladder of faith. Which is totally not his own idea because, Jacob's ladder is a very old story and concept. But yeah, he talked about the ladder of faith. And the thing that I thought he did that was very heavy-handed is he said at the end, your exaltation and that of your posterity depend on you finding your way back to Christ. All right, then. Not just me, but my children. So...
I've got to say, this one was a Nicky talk for me. It's by far. Larry, not impressed.
It was a bit grim.
Go back to the drawing board with this one. I found it coercive. Thought it was, to give examples where children died, and it's okay. You can be comforted, which again, some people find comfort because they can be with their loved ones in the next life, of course. But finishing it off with that quote where you've got this responsibility, especially when there's an acknowledgement at the moment that most families, if they don't have somebody in their family that's either on the precipice of leaving, they have left, is a really heavy thing for people to have to deal with and take responsibility for. And I just think that was unnecessary. Yeah, I think the talk really was quite icky for me, and the ladder of faith, just no nuance around people's faith being a bit of a sideways movement. At the moment, people having to move and adapt and make space all the time for the apostles' words in order to make their faith work, because they don't agree with church policy on a number of things, and they're having to make it work and sidestep all over the place. And so to make it such a binary thing that your faith is either up or down, I think is just, it's an old concept, and it needs to go.
Like a lot of other things in the church that we've mentioned previously, like other doctrines and things, it just needs to be put by the wayside, and we need to understand, like you said, that it's a much more varied sort of line of progression in the church. Definitely, I think calling a man to repentance for not wanting to be a stake president, and then saying he basically had a Jonah experience by being put into a non-fatal incident, or and then he came back and he was called the stake president. So what? Why is that the moral of that story?
When you hear the crowd, when you hear the congregation then chuckle afterwards, it's one of those moments where I feel, again, icky. You remember the Bednar presentation a while back where he's got that boy and he's like stopping him from going past, and yet the whole the people there were all kind of smiling and laughing away, and it's just that moment of Stepford kind of robotic amusement, and you
because
just
that's what you're meant to do.
But actually think about what you're laughing about. That's not funny.
What I gained from this talk was a greater understanding of the extent of my attention span.
You didn't get to the end of that.
And it did make me think. Obviously, I've not done this for so long, and I just thought, wow, 2 hours of this.
Were there more speakers than usual?
There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 speakers.
Is that usual? I can't remember, because I feel like I don't feel like they went on too long.
No, it's normally about 6. I'd say about 20 minutes a piece, or maybe So maybe it's not.
Keep doing that. More speakers, short time frames. Keep doing that. Better.
I think so, and more international speakers still.
Yes.
Please. Although Iring's technically international. He was parents born in Mexico. Was he born in Mexico? Or was it parents?
His parents. Certainly I think he's got his granddad, I think, may have been, because his granddad was polygamous. So he's
part of the Mexico.
I think faction. So. I think he was. I think his granddad was married to Romney sisters.
Yeah. So he's kind of international, I suppose.
Whenever I see Iring, my initial thought is always, I want there to be a film of his life, just so that he can be played by Stephen Merchant. He would be brilliant, wouldn't he? He would do Iring perfectly.
Iring with a West Country accent. He's right. We live in perilous times, we do. But don't worry, God's got inspired servants.
Good.
But he did say God has inspired servants, and he did say it's going to get harder to be a member, and that's an increase in external wickedness, not our fault, not our problem. It's all because of the outside people that it's going to get more difficult to be a member of the church. And they kind of lent very heavily into King Benjamin. And for the first time ever in my life, I heard the natural man scripture that he quoted properly. He talks about us being submissive, which is what the church wants us to be, submissive to them. And they say that by saying, we speak for God. We want you to be submissive to God, and therefore submissive to us. Do what we say. Submit to us like a child submits to his parents. What are your thoughts?
It is interesting, because you get a lot of rhetoric around war and fiery darts, and when we're supposed to be standing up against apostates, or you know, or wickedness in some way, then we've got to have strength. But then when it comes to the church, we should totally be submissive. The other person that did was the female speaker, Sister Alberto. She also talked about being submissive. So he says submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things. Yeah, and but he asked us to be like a child, because he said that's what a child does. And I said to you, didn't I, beforehand, a child also says, but why? But why? But why? But why?
Especially this
And they
kid.
ask lots of questions. Yeah, exactly. And they ask lots of questions. So we should be able to ask questions and expect decent answers.
What they mean by be like children is just trust us. Just trust us like a child trusts his parents. Just trust us.
Just trust us.
I don't like the natural man thing either. Again,
No.
it's another part of this kind of othering, and the world is such a wicked place when it's just not. And the reality is that the natural man, and there's evidence to back this idea up now. There's a great book by Rutger Bregman, I think it was, called Humankind, where he talks about this argument that people are naturally good, and people are born good, and and it really kind of flies in the face of this idea of the natural man being an enemy to God.
It does,
but it works. It works this narrative, doesn't it? Because even though we have this idea of the church is about not having fear. The gospel casts out fear, but they use fear. This all of this wickedness and fiery darts and the natural man, all of that. It's just fear mongering.
Yeah, he talked about the evil messages from Satan,
Yeah.
right? Which this is, and there's a member in the chat actually.
That's code word for you, Nemo.
There's a member in the chat who's unhappy that this video has misled her because it's not an official church general conference stream, and so this is part of those evil messages that Elder Irons just warned us about. It's not.
Yeah,
it's a few British people having a good natter about conference.
Yeah, really, really sorry, but you should be able to listen to a lot of stuff, and testimony shouldn't be that fragile that we can't listen to both sides of something.
And I think that the problem is the church creates those fragile testimonies. All this rhetoric we've been talking about in this session creates fragile testimonies because people are kept away from things that would, challenge them or help them to grow. They're kept feeble and weak because we're told that we need to just be like children and just trust people rather than work things out for ourselves. As Julian said, you would use more critical thinking to buy a vacuum cleaner.
For founder stages of faith, your first stage, that's excellent. The Mormon Church does an awesome job at introducing people to faith. But after that, it needs to be stretched and challenged and flexible in order to be able to serve you well as a human being. And it doesn't do so well at that. So very sorry if it's hurt this lady in any way, but
it's not a lady. I misread the name. So it's a gentleman. Apologies.
Very sorry, but these are words. They're just words,
and we should be allowed. We should be able. If the church is what it claims to be, then we should be able to have these conversations.
I think this is a pretty accurate summation of 2 hours worth of general conference.
Yeah, can I say something positive?
Yeah,
Irene did talk about charity, and I thought that was really good.
I think it was an overall very Christ-centered message. I was just going to piggyback onto the back of that. I think it was an overall very Christ-centered session, which, the reason I'm counting mentions of quotations of Jesus versus quotations of Russell M. Nelson is because it hasn't felt that way. And so I wanted to be able to qualify it, and we'll see how the general conference progresses. It might turn into a total, Russell M. Nelson fest. But at the moment, Jesus is holding up quite well in terms of him being the focus of people's talk.
Yeah, I agree. What's interesting, I think, as well, is that there was a lot about Jesus. There's a lot about fear. We talked about the kind of like the idea of the fear in there, which is interesting off the back of what seems like a bit of a prepper movement that's going on at the moment. We had that back in the 80s, 72-hour packs, all of that sort of stuff. And I know John DeLynn has interviewed a few people recently that have got proper backgrounds. And I've certainly, even in the UK, seen lots of people talking now again about food storage. And I know that's probably hand in hand with the pandemic, but it felt like we'd left a little bit of that alone. And I'm pretty sure that in a recent Woman Stories talk, somebody had said that they were losing a lot of the members, 5 times as many members to kind of right-wing prepper movements rather than those that are allies of LGBT. And so these talks certainly would have been helpful. The idea of they're, standing up against fear and all of that rhetoric, I'm sure would have been helpful for those people. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. It does.
Can I just say, for that gentleman that did tune in thinking that it would be an official church broadcast, that's brilliant, because you've got a lot of it this weekend, and you thought, no, I want a little bit more. That's all of those sessions isn't enough. I want a little bit more. So well
There's
done.
some commitment there. Some beautiful
That is
commitment.
absolute commitment.
There is also, you may have noticed, I've been drinking out of this mug, this beautiful little mug here, because everything we've been saying is prophetic. But if you turn it around, we might see that actually we are not always speaking as a prophet. I think that would be a really handy thing to have in the conference center, a big sign, just currently speaking as either a man or prophet. But as we don't have that, we have to assume that in their official capacity as prophets, seers, and revelators, everything they say over the pulpit at conference is them speaking as a prophet. If you want a mug like that, there'll be a link in the description. Go get yourself one. They're quite nice to drink from, all told. Any final thoughts on the session of conference, everyone?
Do you want to go first?
No, you go.
Well, my thought really links to what you've just said about the whole mug thing. Overall, I found the session to be a little bit just there. There wasn't really anything in there. And I just think about this idea of, if the church is what it says that it is, if these people are what they say they are, and we are supposed to be doing more missionary work. And so I've got a friend that I say, we've got a prophet on the earth that is, he's the mouthpiece of God. So he is God's messenger. He is talking to us this Saturday. He's going to share a message with the world. Want you to watch that. What would be their take home for that? They're not going to come away from that thinking, wow, that's just awesome. There's 2 hours of that, I think, was probably less inspiring than 10 minutes of any TED talk.
Brené Brown.
Go. But there is so much brilliant stuff out there, which again, lay that against this idea of, everything other than what the prophet says, put a question mark next to it. What Wendy's idea. There's so much good stuff out there, stuff that helps us to think better, helps us to be better, helps us to feel more positive about the world that we're in, rather than get focused on all this negativity. Stuff that will help us to combat this polarization that is so toxic in the world at the moment, and is creating so many issues. Yet Anderson mentioned it, but he didn't remedy it. He made it worse by othering everybody other than that's given a message contrary to their message. And so I just think we can do better. Please, we can do better than this. And that's my thought, really.
But yeah, for those nuanced members that are listening to good stuff, that are broadening their horizons and finding really good stuff out there and making the church still work, good luck, well done. And church, stop making them feel like they're mugbloods, like they're half in, like they're not, they're not the real deal. They are your best chance of survival, quite frankly. So be kind to them and let them, their family members know that they can trust them. Stop trying to put them at odds with their family.
Yeah, stop driving them out. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to watch this of the first of 5 conference halftime shows. Wish me luck for the rest of today, as like I said, it's going to be a busy few hours. But really, that's all we had to say, other than I'll see you in a few hours, all right? Thank you very much, Laura and Julian, for joining me. Thank you very much, everyone, for
Good
watching.
luck.
And let's see how the rest of the conference weekend goes. Take care, everyone. Bye.